You get by. Drag lines at my heart, they're tearing us apart, and the mountains...
Drag lines, real world string band. Here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. In our next segment, we'll be looking at U.S. soldiers on U.S. soil. And we'll talk about the Posse Comitatus Act. Is it dead? But right now, along with so-called clean coal technology, both the major presidential candidates, Barack Obama, John McCain, are also supporting expanded offshore oil drilling. Last month, the Democratic-led Congress let expire a 26-year-old ban on offshore oil drilling. Republican vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin's now pushing to also allow for drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Palin's campaign slogan has become "Drill, baby, drill." Meanwhile, the price of oil continues to fall. On Monday, oil briefly fell below $90 a barrel for the first time since February. This marks a nearly $60 drop since July. Joining us now is Antonia Juhasz, author of her second book, The Tyranny of Oil, the world's most powerful industry and what we must do to stop it. She's a fellow with Oil Change International and the Institute for Policy Studies. Her earlier books, The Bush Agenda, Invading the World, One Economy at a Time. Welcome to Democracy Now!
Thanks for having me.
What do you mean by the tyranny of oil?
Well, I mean that this is, at this point, the most powerful, most profitable, most politically dominant set of companies in the United States and in the world. They are creating a tyrannical rule over our government with a resource that is creating a tyrannical impact on our climate and driving us towards climate extinction and, of course, war.
Why are oil and gas prices so high?
Well, they went up last week, the highest one-day jump in the history of crude oil prices, back down, as you said, to 90, now back up to 93. They are this high and they are this volatile because of deregulation, the exact same deregulation that fed the mortgage meltdown, the exact same deregulation that gave us Enron, if folks remember Enron, deregulation of crude oil futures markets led by the lobbying efforts of big oil and big banks who are now reaping big benefits. The banks that have survived so far, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, the two banks with oil companies that founded their own unregulated crude futures exchange on which the majority of crude oil futures are now traded, which have sent the price skyrocketing and put essentially control of this, the most important factor determining the world economy, into the hands of speculative traders, many of whom are former Enron traders, working at the banks, working at the oil companies, and working at hedge funds.
You have a chapter called Lobbyists, Lawyers, and Elections, How Big Oil Kills Democracy.
One of the things that I found fascinating, actually, in doing my own research, and as someone who has worked for two members of Congress, was to uncover how this profit, and just to be clear, these are the highest profits in the history of the world, unparalleled with any other industry.
Which companies?
The big oil companies. ExxonMobil, Chevron, ConocoPhillips, BP, Shell, also Marathon and Valero, the biggest companies operating in the United States. The profits are unparalleled with the defense industry, pharmaceuticals, banks, you name it, no comparison. So this money just infiltrates every layer of government, from the most local level. I tell the story of Richmond, California, near where I live, to the state level, federal, international, and permeates not just in campaign contributions, which of course is important. So far, about $1.6 million by the oil industry to McCain-Palin, a little less than $400,000 to the Obama-Biden ticket. Pretty clear difference there, about 75% of oil giving to Republicans overall. But campaign contributions are just the very tip of the iceberg. It really is lobbying where the big money comes in. It's the front groups that you don't even know are associated with the oil industry where the influence comes in. Well, one that folks know is the American Petroleum Institute. Another is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which is getting more and more and more money from the oil industry and doing more of its bidding. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, by far the largest lobbying presence on the Hill. And that money permeates decision-making so that when we should be winning, when even people like Governor Palin say climate change is a real issue, it's a problem, it's affecting my state, at the same time, we can eliminate a 27-year moratorium on offshore drilling. We can do it for shale. We can go into tar sands. It's ridiculous.
How did that happen?
Money. Simple. Very, very simple. Both candidates, Obama and McCain, changed their previous opposition to offshore drilling. The opposition to offshore drilling is based on, one, it's incredibly expensive. And in the words of a Chevron executive, who I quote in the book, a total crapshoot. $120 million per hole. 80% are dry holes. We already know from the Bush administration 10 years until offshore drilling is likely to do anything for anyone except the oil companies.